What's poppin'? What's poppin'? Jesus' sacrifice will never be forgotten. Hey.
Amen. Amen.
I actually did not know what he was gonna say, so I was just as surprised as you are.
You got Michaela's genuine surprise voice. Hey.
Indeed.
So never throw Michaela a surprise party, because that's the reaction you're going to get. Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to the latest episode. This is episode whatever of whatever podcast. Just kidding. It's the Southside Next One Life podcast, baby. Whoop, whoop. Over
That's
here,
right.
we got Joshua Metz.
What's going on? Oh, we doing a little bit of a different order, mixing it up, keeping us on our toes.
Yep.
I like it.
You want to be
it.
ready. And we got Jared Miller right over here.
Save the best for last. I know what you're doing.
We got Michaela McDonald, best for last.
What's up, smooches?
If this is going to be the vibe of the podcast, I'm here for it.
It's a late one tonight,
Yeah,
guys.
this is a late one.
We've been here a minute.
Salads
Salads have been eaten. Gossip has been spoken. Tea has been spilled.
I did lose my Starbucks. I just want that to be known.
And I gained a Starbucks
She did get... Autumn walked through the door
before the podcast.
this time, and she hands Michaela a Starbucks.
That I didn't even ask for.
It was the most genuine display of just kindness I'd ever seen between you two.
Toe tweet.
Toe tweet.
That was some sisterly love.
I know, it doesn't usually happen a lot. But welcome back to the podcast. Let's just start this off with whoops and poops because I forgot it last week. So I'm going to make sure I didn't forget this week. And we'll start with Michaela.
I knew I was pointing over there.
My whoops and poops. I would say that my whoop is that I'm officially done with my bachelor's degree.
Let's go.
Yes, indeed. My poop is that even though I graduated Friday, I still had to do I still had 2 finals and a final project that was due last night. But I did get them done, got them turned in time. I've passed all the classes, so I don't have to worry about it, but I'm interested to see what I get on my final project. I'm still going to pass, I would literally have to get a -50 in order to not pass this class, but I'm interested to see still what grade I get, because I applied myself very well. Yeah. So I'm hoping I get an A, but we shall see. This teacher's a little rough.
Man, that would be so cool if you just end your last college class with an A. Or your last master's class with an A.
Yep.
It'd be sick.
Well,
Bachelor's
class, not master's. Not master's yet. I can't think about that yet. That's a couple semesters away.
We're
Taking some
youngins.
time
We're
off.
youngins.
You're youngins. I'm about to be 24.
Oh, a whole couple months ahead.
Okay, more than a couple of months ahead for you, Joshua.
7 months?
Yeah.
A couple. I mean, I don't know why I'm talking. I'm 2 years younger, but okay.
Said, and
Here. I'll go. We'll save Josh for last. So, whoop. We had our Christmas program this past Sunday. It was really great. Josh and I were both in the choir. And
I heard Jared singing his heart out, and it sounded good.
I went into it. Okay, so the only other time I've sung in a choir was the Christmas choir that we had earlier this year. And when I tell you, I was mouthing those words. I was not singing. But this time, we just spent 2 months preparing. So I knew these songs inside and out. And I was like, I'm going to go up there, sing my heart out.
and he was dancing.
I was dancing, and Michaela was in the front row. And I made sure to make eye contact with her every time I would start getting a little loose with it.
And I got a video of him getting a little loose with it. And it got to the point where he's doing absolutely nothing anybody else is doing.
No,
and then he finally
no.
looks over because they start to clap. And he's going, moving and grooving. And they're clapping. And he's like, oh.
Guys, if this wasn't urge enough to switch from audio only to also video on our YouTube, just to see Michaela's imitation of my dance.
This was his arms. He was like this.
You audio listeners are never going to experience this.
Check us out on YouTube.
You gotta see the YouTube.
No, for sure. But yeah, so we did our Christmas program. It was pretty lit. Also, The Chosen came out last week, but I got to watch the first episode last night.
Oh,
And
nice.
I'm a little fanboy when it comes to The Chosen, so I was very happy about it. They started with the Sermon on the Mount, and then just kept on going. And I was like, this episode, okay, I don't want to spoil it, but this one wasn't too because I looked in the Bible, they didn't, a lot of the scenes in this episode weren't recorded in the Bible. So I would imagine that this was how life that wasn't recorded went, but it's all up to the imagination.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was kind of like one of my favorite parts about the show is like watching a scene and then going to look it up in the Bible. So it's kind of like that was a little like tough to get through, but the episode was really good, and the season is going to be amazing. So I'm hype. And my poop, I think everyone just shares it. This is the most stressful month of the year.
It is indeed.
There's not a single day where something isn't going on.
I texted my sisters on Monday. I think it was Monday. It was Monday or yesterday. I can't. All the days run together. But I texted them and I said, just to let you guys know, I'm broke. So all you're getting from me for Christmas is love.
That's the best gift
And
of all.
that's like
That should be enough.
I think in the past sometimes you've said that kind of stuff as jokes, but like seriously, like this year, it's just been so taxing, and it's like this month especially, and it's all going to be so worth it at the end of the month. We're going to get to go to Passion. That's coming up in less than 2 weeks, by the way.
That's right after
Catch us at Passion.
right after Christmas.
Yeah, going to
Yeah.
Passion, and then I'm also going on a mission trip that I have to finish paying off in January. So I'm literally like, I've got no extra money to be spending on Christmas presents.
And we have big podcast plans that we can't tell you about.
No.
But
It will happen.
We have stuff coming within the next few
Eventually,
months.
eventually, when it's not $1 million.
Yes, yeah, that too.
And when it's not like the third thing in a row after.
Oh my gosh. See, I think Passion's going to be a good reset
Yes.
going into the end of the year, just because, like, so we're going to get back the day before New Year's. So the last day of 2022, if
Yeah.
we're not all sleeping, like from morning to night, then we're doing something wrong.
I'm also preaching that day. I'm preaching January 1st, so
Wow.
Pastor Shell did that on purpose. He did that such on purpose. We talked about it, and he was like, let's make sure we get back the 31st so I can prep for the sermon. And I'm like, okay, no problem. And then just like a couple weeks ago, he was like, how would you feel about preaching that first Sunday in January? And I was like, oh yeah, no problem. And then not realizing it's literally January 1st, the day we get back, the day after Passion.
He's so like slick.
He is. He did that so slick, and I was like, and once I found out and I put two and two together, I was like, you're smart. You got me.
But
got
you
me
already
there.
agreed, so
But it's okay.
It's all yours. But yeah. So I guess my poop is just like stressful month. There's gonna be a whoop at the end of it, so this is kind of a whoop and poop sandwich. But for now, it's just a whoop and a poop. It's like avocado toast with my whoop and poop toast with spread. Okay, Josh, you can go.
And your Himalayan pink salt on top.
Everything but bagel seasoning.
Oh my gosh. All right, guys. Let's see here. You know how we do it? Start with the poop, end with the whoop. A poop, I would say, is still have. If you tuned in last episode, I still have a family friend who is in the hospital and kind of didn't get the best of news, but that is okay because no matter what the doctors may say or anything, that the Lord is still in control. So the poop is that he's not doing too well and didn't get the best of kind of diagnosis from the doctors. I don't want to go into detail on here. But just keep in prayer. His name is Mike. So if you are a praying person and you are hearing this, just keep that in your prayers if you would. That'd be great. So it's just been a little hard. I've been going through it with my best friend. So it's like, I'm not going through it directly, but almost directly because I'm very it's between indirectly and directly just because he's family to me. So just been there every day, and so just been carrying that burden and sharing that burden. But on a whoop side, kind of work related, I did talk with my boss yesterday, and kind of maybe hinting at possibly very soon getting the work truck that he has. Being able to drive it to and from work, which would be great because I wouldn't have to be paying, my own gas, tolls, wear and tear on the tires, oil, miles on my own car. So that'd be great. So that would be a huge blessing. I know the Lord's working and he's been, hearing my heart and my mind lately. So that's a big whoop. So about tonight's topic.
Dun dun dun. As we're preparing for the Christmas season.
Yes.
Yes, this is still going in conjunction with building up to next week's episode. So I think next week's the big one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, next
All about our Savior birth.
man, we're gonna have so much fun with that episode.
With a twist.
Was it? Michaela hasn't even told us this twist. Yes,
I don't know what the twist is.
That's
I just wanted to see their faces.
to be determined.
Huh? So last week we talked about giving. We talked about like having a giving heart and having an attitude of giving, and the way that Christ in us is what allows us to have that giving mentality. Well, this week we're gonna kind of like go 180 on that and talk about sacrifice. Transition from giving to sacrifice, and I think a lot of us have this preconceived notion of what we think it means to sacrifice, when that both isn't the case and it's not what God asks of us. And us as Christians and us as like pursuers of Jesus, we want to follow the word to a T, and we want to aim to please God and nothing more. And that already goes into kind of sacrifice. So if I could ask you guys, how would you define what true sacrifice is? Sorry, I put you on the spot.
No, true sacrifice is all about willing to like give up something for a purpose, give up something for someone else. And I think it's just, even if you look back to Adam and Eve, it's in our own human nature to go against God. It's in our own human nature to take things upon ourselves. You know what I mean? Like the whole reason, Adam and Eve ate from this tree is because the serpent told them, if you do this, you will be like God. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's in our own human nature to take things upon ourselves, in our own human nature to be selfish, and reject what God has said or do against something that God has commanded us to do. And that's just kind of like sacrifice is the opposite. Sacrifice is, I'm willing to give up everything. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to follow after this purpose, to follow after this plan. And so for me, sacrifice looks a lot like turning against your human side, turning against your flesh, and being willing to give anything, whatever God's calling you to give up. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Sometimes that's people in your life. Sometimes those are items or idols you've created for yourself. Sometimes it's a job. Sometimes it's money. It's finances. You know what I mean? But each person, I think God works differently depending on what your innermost desires are, what you're idolizing. If you're idolizing finances, God's going to want you to give up that portion of your life for him. Not in a sense that you go broke, but being willing to display where the importance lines up. So I guess that's what sacrifice is to me, if that makes sense, is just turning away from your flesh, turning away from these human parts about you, these selfish parts of you, and willing to commit to God and say, instead of being selfish, how can I be selfless?
Mm-hmm. To me, sacrifice means to me not holding back. So
that's good.
Just like in the same instance that when Jesus sacrificed himself for us, he held nothing back, but he gave absolutely everything that he had to give. He held nothing back. So in that same way, if we look inwards in our lives and we examine ourselves and our hearts and our minds, and we look at our finite of humanness, are we holding back from God? Are there areas in our life where we're holding back from him? Are we, I'm trying to kind of add on to what Michaela said, because she said pretty much everything.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. No, because that was literally perfect. But I'm trying to, are we holding back from God when we're, going out and drinking with our friends and drinking maybe a little bit too much, or, giving into sexual morality and giving into the flesh? Are we withholding that from God? Because when we do that, we're not giving him everything.
Well, it feels too good. That's what we convince ourselves. We convince ourselves that this is great. This feels so good. How could I ever give this up? How could there be a God who doesn't want me to experience this pleasure? Mm-hmm. And it's not that he doesn't want you to experience, sexual pleasures, things like that, but confine it to commitment. Mm-hmm. Confine it to a marriage, being willing to say, I love my partner more than I love sex. Like, it's just, there are benefits, and there's true happiness, and there's true pleasure found in our relationships with Christ, but we convince ourselves, or we allow society and the world to convince us that they build these things up so great to be so glorious, and then we don't know why we throw ourselves into these situations and we're still not satisfied. You know what I mean? But we just convince ourselves that this is great. It's when I'm on the drugs, I'm really high for this moment and it's awesome. And it's not until I come down where I'm depressed. So then it creates the cycle where we keep doing it over and over again. I feel really good when I'm sleeping around with people. So I'm just going to keep sleeping around with people. I feel really good when I'm drunk and partying. So I'm just going to keep getting drunk and I'm going to keep partying. And that's the cycle we create for ourselves instead of doing it in healthy manners, why do you got to get drunk every night? Why can't you just have a drink? Why do you have to go and party every night? Why can't you put yourself in a healthy environment? You know what I mean? But it's just we build up these things so high that we think that the only happiness we're going to experience is we just get into a habit over and over and over again, and we don't understand what sacrifice really looks like. Because then we go to church on Sunday and then we do everything else Monday through Saturday.
Yeah.
And just tack on with that real quick is, Paul tells us in Romans 12, offer yourselves as a living sacrifice. It's continuous. As long as we're living, we're sacrificing, pleasing the flesh to honor God with that, honor Him in every aspect of our lives, honor Him with the words that we speak out of our mouth to others, in our actions, our thoughts. If you really want to get into, our thoughts and where our thoughts really lay, are they honoring God in our thoughts? Because, that's between you and Him. Not even the enemy knows our thoughts. And so it's like, what are we withholding from God that He's calling us to sacrifice? Because He wants to know, just like with Abraham and Isaac, He was just willing to see if Abraham was willing. And we were talking about earlier, the whole thing that it took to leading up to Isaac, coming into the picture, and how Abraham really loved him. God was just seeing if he would really go through after everything he went through, if he was willing to give him up and sacrifice him.
Yeah.
And we know how it ended. It didn't. Of course, it had a good ending to it. It had a great ending to it. I'm sorry, it had a great ending. But the whole moral of the story was, was Abraham willing to sacrifice something that was so meaningful? And it's like, in our lives, are we willing to sacrifice something so much that means something to us, that is so meaningful? Are we willing to sacrifice that if it means that it's going to be pleasing to God?
Okay, well, first of all, I knew it was a risk taking scripture from Romans, because Josh took it.
Yeah, Josh, it's also one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
But we're big Romans fans.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and in preparing for this podcast, I too was
also had that on my list.
Man, we are Roman kids. But okay, no, I'll take it back to growing up, and it was just, I know you guys felt the same way, but it was always just so much easier bringing my report card to my parents when I had good grades.
Oh, 100%.
I looked forward to it. I would be on the bus ride home wanting to share that with my parents. But when I had bad grades,
you want to tear that
hold it off for as long as I can. And I think that's how we take God, and that's how we take our sacrifices. If I'm making buku's money, it's easy to drop tons of money and think that I'm making a difference and think that I'm making actual sacrifice, but I'm not. And I'll tell you what sacrifice is not, and sacrifice is giving what you can afford. The whole kind of point of sacrifice is that we kind of like a set things up for the future things. We make sacrifices in the present so that in hopes that the future may be better in some way. And I think, I think far too often we get into this mindset of comparing amounts and comparing quantity and saying I sacrifice more because I sacrifice this and you only sacrifice this. It's well, was the thing that you sacrificed really a sacrifice?
Yeah.
Was it really that important to you? And I think just with so many things in the Bible, we're taught to look at Jesus as the standard. And if we go back to that Romans verse, it's Romans 12:1. He says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." And then you kind of skim through the second verse, and then it says, then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. So what I take that as, like, the thing that really stuck out to me was like what's a living sacrifice? And living, the way I kind of took it was just like continual. We're taught to contribute a continual sacrifice to God. And we're supposed to do it with a giving mindset, giving mentality we talked about last week. But we have Jesus as the standard for our sacrifice. That's not to say that we jump in front of a car and for the sake of Jesus, but
it's to say, do you love God so much that you understand that Jesus was sent as your sacrifice, that he died for your sins? Like, do you understand that? Do you believe it? Do you trust in that? Are you resignating in that? Is that what your faith is built on? Because if your faith is built on that, if your faith is built on knowing the fact that there's no way we could have saved ourselves, there's no way we could have done this on our own, Jesus had to come, he had to live this perfect life, he had to die on the cross for our sins to offer us this redemption, to give us grace, to give us mercy, so we can have a way out of these sinful natures, how to have this way out of this sinful life that we've been consumed in, because the world is sinful, you know? We're born into it, we're born into this sin. And so it's like, if we understand that and we're willing to say that this is what our foundation is built on, this is what our faith is built on, then it shouldn't be hard to sacrifice. It shouldn't be hard to understand sacrifice. It shouldn't be hard to offer our bodies as a living sacrifice, to offer ourselves and our time and our worship, and to be willing to step away from the parts of our lives that God is calling us away from. It shouldn't be hard, you know? But sometimes it is. It's just the reality of life. But when you come to the terms, when you love God so much, like, you know what I mean? Like, because I love God so much, because I've been saved from my sins, because I know what it means to live a healthy life, to have a healthy relationship with him, I don't have the desire to go out clubbing. I don't have the desire to surround myself with drugs and alcohol 24/7. I don't need to go get drunk and do all these things to feel pleasure, you know what I mean? Like, it just, I don't need that, and I don't desire that. And I'm convinced that I don't desire those things because I've understood what my purpose in Christ is. Because I've built my faith and my foundation on knowing that God gave his life, his son, as a sacrifice for me. Jesus sacrificed himself for me. So why shouldn't I be willing to sacrifice anything that he calls me to sacrifice? You know?
That's good. That's good.
Like, I'm a big Paul fan. You know, I bring up Paul a lot. You know, obviously Paul from the Bible, the Apostle Paul. But I'm just like, this man literally said, to live is Christ, to die is gain. And I know that my life's going to be so much better, but I'll chill. I'll wait here and I'll teach people in the world, and I'll spread the gospel in the way that God wants me to, because I know that my purpose, my mission isn't done here yet. Like, he sacrificed that. You know what I mean?
Well, you talked about David and waiting all those years to become king. Like, he sacrificed years on years on years.
But he knew that's what God called him to do. You know what I mean? Like, you're talking about a dude named Paul who's literally like, oh my gosh, life sucks. Life is trash. I know that I will enjoy life so much better in heaven. So, like, I really do want to die. But, like, I'm going to chill here. And be like, finish out what God's called me to do. And just like David, how much loneliness he experienced, how much running he had to do from Saul. You know what I mean? Like, all this craziness. And he suffered it all. He went through it all because he knew what his purpose was. He knew what God was calling him to do.
It involves a dedication of all personal wants and needs and desires and, like, accomplishments and titles and everything. It requires a dedication of all those things to God, and to understand that, like, I wouldn't be anywhere that I am today without God. So why would I not give God everything that I have?
When the dedication and the trust is there, then it's not going to feel like a sacrifice.
Amen. Wow, that's good.
It feels like a sacrifice now because our hearts aren't where they need to be. You know what I mean? Like, we were talking about tithing before, like, we were joking, you know what I mean? Like, we're like, we get paid, and then I'm like, and I joked that whenever the first of the month comes and I get paid by the church, the first thing I do is I log on to, you know, Southside.
EFT.
Yep, Southside Co-op. And I get on there and I log into my account and I pay my tithes.
Yeah.
And as I'm paying it, I go, "You're welcome, God." You know what I mean? But like, it's really not that big of a deal. Like,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't hurt my heart to do that. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, it's not like a sacrifice because I know that my spiritual walk got better after I started tithing. After I started not just giving my praise and giving my worship and giving devotional time, but also giving in finances. You know what I mean? Like, there's certain tugs you're gonna have on your heart, and one of those tugs was, I grew up in the church, but it wasn't until I was till after I started college that I started tithing. You know what I mean? And like, that's sad. I look back on it, I'm like, I grew up in the church and I didn't start tithing until way later. You know what I mean? But once I did, my relationship grew. And so it's like these things that we think are such huge sacrifices, when you really build your relationship with Christ, it doesn't even bother you anymore. Like, sure, tithing bothered me in the beginning because I was like, oh, I shouldn't have to give my money to the church. You know what I mean? But now I'm like, I was blessed with this money in the first place.
It
This
ain't
money
even
ain't
mine. It
This money
ain't
ain't
mine.
I'm getting paid to do the ministry of the Lord. There's a lot of people who do not get paid to be pastors, who churches can't afford to pay them. And here I am complaining about tithing. No, this money is coming from the Lord in the first place. And so it's like, when you get where you need to be with God, these things that were so hard to do before are just like, this is the Lord's. This was the Lord's to bless me with. This is the Lord's to do whatever He wants with.
So everyone's giving back a little bit back to Him.
And that goes beyond finances. That goes into time, into every avenue of your
everything.
life. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like really, is it really going to hurt you that much to like distance yourself from the person that checks in on you like once a year, and the only time they want to hang out with you is if they're going to the club, or they need an extra person to go drink with? They need the sober friend to drive them home. You know what I mean? Like, is it really going to hurt you that much to hang out with them a little bit less?
That is true. Every single area in our lives, if we treated it as if, like, because Jesus talked a lot about money, and that was like the main central point. And it's like this treasure that we have. I call it treasure, but what we have now, it isn't ours. It never was ours. It never will be ours. It will always, forever, till the end of time, belong to Christ.
Exactly.
And not only our finances, our lives. They were never ours. They're never going to be ours. And if we lived every area of life like that, because I'm here talking, but I wish I had this mindset of like, let me just give it all to God. But I don't. And that's sin. And that's this generation after generation after generation of sin. That's no, like that. More or less is what got us here. Kind of our misconstrued notion that we could, I think at the end of the day, like, do better than God. Yeah. I could handle my money better than God can, so I'm not going to tithe.
Exactly.
I can pick my friendships better than God can, so
like, wouldn't God want me to use this money on groceries? Wouldn't God want me to use this money on my bills? And I'm like,
well, first of all, God wants your first 10%.
Yes,
that's right.
But,
period.
No, but it's like, that stuff just like really gets me fired up, especially like when you meet those holiday Christians, where it's like,
The Creasters.
Where it's like, that was good.
That was from Pastor Justin Miller at
You did?
at Real Life. He called them Creasters when I was going.
Creasters. Oh, that's so funny. But yeah, you like see all these people who they believe in Christ, and they have just such an opportunity to give their lives to promoting the gospel, but they don't, because it's not their job. But it's all of our jobs, and it's all of our jobs to lead with a sacrificing mentality, because like that same mentality is that giving mentality that we talked about last week. And it's like, we give, we sacrifice, we do so cheerfully because Jesus is the standard.
Exactly.
So one thing that like kind of really hit my heart was when we were talking about, giving and sacrificing, across the board, whether it be, our time, our talents, our abilities, our finances. It's like, we can sacrifice all we want, but if it's not coming from the right place in our heart, then it's meaningless to God. And that's such an important thing. Like, I make sure I tithe every single Friday. There was that one story where I missed that one Friday, but then made up for it because I forgot to give that one Friday, but then I gave the one to make it up. But God just looks for who's giving earnestly from their heart.
Yeah.
And he's looking who's going to be sacrificing and trusting in him, sacrificing, but also trusting in him to make those ends meet. Whatever need that is needing to be met is, if you need to sacrifice, the tithe, the 10%, and you're like, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, to be able to, reach. I don't know if he's be able to reach, but God can make that extend and reach out. But he's looking to see who's going to sacrifice from their heart and trusting in faith and believing in him that he's going to provide whatever else is needed for us. It's that trust in him.
That's good.
So we're not sacrificing without a reason, but he gives us every reason to sacrifice to him. He gives us more than enough reasons to trust in him and to be able to say, God, I'm going to sacrifice this to you. I know you're going to take and do with it whatever you intend to do with it, but I know that it's going to be blessed because I'm doing it from a place in my heart which is accepting to you. Because he looks at the posture of our heart, not necessarily at the quantity, like Jerry was saying in that one story he was saying, or that you mentioned earlier. He's not looking about the quantity, but he's looking at the quality of the heart of which when we're giving and when we're doing and when we're sacrificing. He's like saying we're not doing it out of just for no reason, but we have a motivation behind why we do it.
Well, it all comes down to your foundation. Is your foundation built on trust? Because that's when you're going to be able to sacrifice and give to God, and it's not going to be it's not like God has to beg you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, you do it cheerfully. You're a cheerful giver. You're willing to give whatever it takes, whether it's your first 10% or your time or your effort or your praises or your worship or prayer time, devotional time, all these things. But it's just, is your foundation built on trust? And Galatians chapter 2 verse 20 says, "My old self has been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. So I live in this earthly body by trusting in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me." And so, who loved me and gave himself for me, because of this, I'm going to trust in him. Because of this, I'm dead. My old self has been crucified with Christ. Mm-hmm. I have this new life in him. And it's no longer me who's living for myself, but everything that I do, Christ lives in me, and he's replicated through me, and that's built on trust and knowing that I'm not going to waste this opportunity that Jesus gave me. I'm not going to waste what was done on the cross. But I'm going to live for something bigger. I'm going to live for something more important. My faith is going to be built on this foundation of trust. So that way the sacrificing comes easy. It's not going to be a sacrifice. It's going to be blessings. It's going to be gifts. I'm giving back what's just been blessed to me, which is my time, my life. This life isn't yours. Where did it come from? You didn't just magically appear, you know what I mean? I know there's a million people in the world who want to tell you that you just magically appeared here one day, or all these different things happen, but no, there's a purpose. There's a purpose for you. You're not just here floating around, and bad things happen. The world is not a great, cheerful, la-di-da place. No, things happen, but is your trust, is your foundation built on knowing how important you were? That the Son of God died for you. That Jesus lived this perfect life because you couldn't. Died on this cross to save you from this world you were being, dragged down into, save you from this sin. And all he's asking is for you to meet him halfway. All he's asking for is for you to show a little bit of faith, show a little bit of sacrifice, show a little bit of love. And that shouldn't be hard if we're rooted in trust, if our foundation is built on that.
That's good.
That's all I got.
Yeah, just one more thing. I just think it's so cool how it all interconnects. It's like you can't sacrifice in the way that you described to where it doesn't hurt. You can't sacrifice in a joyful way if you don't
understand the reasoning.
Yeah. If you don't understand the reasoning, if you don't trust the reasoning, if you don't trust God.
Yeah.
And if you are how do you say it? And if you aren't humble.
Exactly.
It's all these things work together. It's if you don't have that giving cheerfully mindset, and if you don't approach it in a humble way, all these things come together to where we're called, one of our chief callings, I think, is to sacrifice. And it's like to sacrifice, to lay down our lives. We've seen countless examples of people in the Bible who were both willing to lay down the lives of themselves, but also their families and their children. And it's like this is what we're called. We're told that this Christian walk won't be easy.
Yeah.
We're going to have to give up some things.
Yeah.
We're going to,
Exactly.
even when you think you don't, you do.
Yep.
And
Because like before the podcast, Josh brought up Abraham and Isaac.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's just like it's like a kid whose parents bring up the kid in church. They force the kid to go to church every week, so the kid doesn't really want to be there. They don't understand what the importance of bringing time to like designating time for the Lord. But it's like saying you're taking somebody who hasn't built their own intentional relationship with Christ, and you're trying to force them into tithing, and because they don't understand it.
They're not going to do it cheerfully.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're going to be miserable while they're doing it. And so it's like, but once you build this relationship with Christ, once you have this connection, this personal relationship, like, and you begin to understand like the framework of what it takes to make a healthy relationship, do you think you can go out and date somebody and not spend time with them? Do you think their relationship's going to work out? No. Like,
Zero
it's
chance.
not. And so why would we think that it works any differently with God? You know what I mean? Why would we think it works any differently? It's like saying I love Call of Duty, but I'm not going to play it at all. It's like saying
That's funny.
I want to win my fantasy football league, but I don't change out my roster every week. And next thing you know, you've got 5 bye players,
Yeah.
playing, and so you're missing like half of your points.
It's
And
like, how did this happen?
Exactly. It's like all these things we want in our life. Like you use these everyday analogies. Everything you want, everything you strive for, you work for. If you want
Yeah.
a promotion at your job, do you think you're going to get that by taking sick days every week? Or taking the most vacation time? No, you're going to dedicate everything you have to getting this job promotion. You're going to be as good as you're at your job right now and go above that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But why do we think we can have this relationship with Christ and not offer any type of sacrifices? We're willing to sacrifice for a promotion. We're willing to sacrifice time to have the best fantasy league. We're willing to sacrifice time to beat a Call of Duty game. We're willing to sacrifice money and all these different things so that way we can have this great relationship and maybe have sex with somebody, you know what I mean? But we can't say, like, I'm going to sacrifice everything I have for God. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the way people view the world today. But when you look at it in everyday comparison, everyday analogies, it's just like we're willing to do all these things for these materialistic things that don't matter. We're willing to sacrifice all this time so that way we can have the most money. We can, drink as much as we want. We can party as much as we want. We can get high as much as we want. We can sleep around with as many people as we want. We can do all these things and sacrifice all this time and finances and do all this different stuff. But then we're not willing to do it to increase our relationship with Christ. And that just comes from being selfish. That just comes from being human. You know what I mean? But that's what sacrifice is, stepping away from your flesh and saying, like, I trust God, I love God, I want to build my relationship with Him. And so maybe put a little less time into the job promotion we're trying to get and a little bit more time into recognizing what God's wanting us to do. So that way when we pay our tithes, we're not crying about it. When we're attending church on a Wednesday night, we're not upset because we just got off of work and we had to rush to get here. We're missing a party on a Saturday night because we have to be up early for church on Sunday. Like when we're really vibing in our relationship with Christ, when we're really growing as much as we should be, those things aren't going to be hard. Like it's going to be easy to turn things down. It's going to be easy to walk away from things because we know what the bigger calling is. We know what the bigger purpose is. I hope some of that made sense.
Nah,
I
that's
just went
fire.
on a little rant there.
No, that trust, and it's all built on trust. And as soon as we allow ourselves to just fully put our trust in the Lord, then we'll start to see things change. But it starts with us. I know people don't
Exactly.
like hearing that, especially in this society, in this generation, but
It's what we need to hear.
it does start with us. Man. Like, Josh, you got anything else?
It dawned on my heart, it's like Michaela was saying, it's like, it's because of the Lord that we have, it's because of Him, of what He blesses us with, the ability to be able to go to a job and be able to, He gives us the monetary value to be able to tithe. He gives us that. He gives us the ability to be able to go to and from work safely, and he gives us the ability to be here on this podcast. And in serving the Lord, it does take sacrifice one way or another to serve the Lord and be a servant of Him. To be a servant of Christ, it does require sacrifice. And like I want to reiterate what Paul says. Offer yourselves as a living sacrifice. Offer your bodies. Because these aren't our own. They were purchased. They were purchased by the blood of Christ, and that's a very, very high purchase. That's probably the biggest purchase of all time, is what Jesus did on the cross and the blood shed for us. So, as we wind down here, I just want to, give that encouragement for us to seek deeper every single day, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. None of us know when the Lord's going to call us home.
Yeah.
So that's why it's crucial, especially in this day and age, in this society, and we see this world getting more and more out of control. The more that we sacrifice for Christ, the more His glory will be shown through us into this world that so desperately needs it, and to those around us, so that His love can be more abounding in everything that we say and everything that we do. So let's take inventory of maybe some things that we need to sacrifice more of, maybe more time to spend with Him. Maybe that means waking up a little early, sacrificing a little sleep so we can have a little time in the morning before we go to work to spend some time in His Word and in prayer and in devotion to start our day off, to spend a little more time to get closer to Him. Maybe that means, if you play video games, maybe a little less time playing video games, whatever it is. You know exactly what it is to sacrifice that on behalf of Jesus. So dig deeper every single day, push a little more, sacrifice a little more from your heart, and show God that I'm doing this not because I ought to, or it's because I love you, Lord. That's the reason why I'm going to sacrifice.
Point blank, period.
Period, poo. All right, well, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode. We love you guys. So excited for next week. Next week's going to be amazing.
With the twist.
With the twist. We're actually going to add in a twist because you said that. We're not going to let the listeners down.
Now that I said it, I actually have a thought that I'll share with you guys.
Let's go. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me in Michaela's living room to record this.
And me, Michaela, in my own living room.
Oh, this was actually my moment. Awkward. But love you guys so much. We love you guys so much.
We love you.
And y'all know how we end off every podcast.
All of you. No exclusions.
Kayla, you're supposed to be the pastor here. All right.
There's 3 people in this room that I love. Me, myself, and I. Just kidding.
Just take this equipment home with me, I guess.
All right, Jared, how do we end it?
Okay, so what we do is, first, we love each other. Second, we say a word that means goodbye, but it's not goodbye, and we all say it at the same time. And if we say the same word as somebody else this group, we're beyond fired. We won't get included in
whoever says the same word will not be on the podcast next week.
Oh. So
maybe
that would mean both people.
That's the twist.
That's the twist.
Okay, all right. Pressure's on. Everyone got your word?
All right, I do. Mine's technically 2, but it's okay.
Oh no, mine was 2. I have to rethink.
I got mine.
Could you imagine all 3 of us say the same thing? Nobody here for the podcast next week.
I know what yours is.
No, you don't.
All right, let's go.
There's no way.
All right,
if you know what it is, then say it. But it's not going to be the right.
I'm gonna count down from 3. 3, 2, 1.
See
you later, alligator.
It's close. I said, see you in a while, crocodile.
I was thinking about that.
I said flippity flop.